Back to Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Welcome back to the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle. As always, continuing on today with our NFL divisional preview series. Today we are in our second place episode for the NFC North, following the first place Detroit Lions, who barely win the division with a 9-8 record. In second place, I have last year's champion, the 8-9 Minnesota Vikings, finishing in second this year. An 8-9 overall record, 3-3 in the division. So that'll be second in the NFC North and eighth place in the NFC. So they are the first team out of the playoffs in my projections for this year. Last year was a bit of a surprise year for the Vikings. I actually had them dethroning the Packers and winning the division with a 12-5 record, but they wound up going 13-4. That obviously was first in the NFC North, winning the division, third seed in the NFC playoffs, but they fell short in the first round in a home game to the Giants in the 3-6 matchup. They lost 31-24 to the New York Giants last year in the wild card round. Overachieved amongst most expectations. There was some people that were kind of buying in on the Vikings as potentially taking that leap and knocking the Packers off. And they did just that, but they exceed a lot of expectations. I think most people, if they were expecting them to do just that, would be like 10 or 11 wins. They wound up getting 13. So a very good year overall by the Vikings. Obviously, coming up short in the playoffs wasn't a good way to end the season, but most people didn't really believe in this team throughout the year. They had 11 wins by one score last year, and all four of their losses were by double digits. So it's either they were winning really close games or getting blown out. And it'll be interesting to see if that formula carries over to this year and they're able to replicate that success that they had in year one under Kevin O'Connell, or if they kind of regress towards the mean a little bit, because 11 wins by one score, I don't think is doable again in back-to-back years. I think you'll lose, maybe 3 or 4 of those games, and then all 4 losses by double digits. I don't necessarily think they'll get blown out that much again this year, but still expect probably 2 losses, double digits. Those 11 wins get cut in half maybe by one score to 5 wins, and you're looking more of like a 8-9, 9-8 type team. So I'm expecting the Vikings to take a bit of a step back this year, and if they do, Kirk Cousins could be one of the main reasons why, and we might not see him back next year in Minnesota. When you take a look at the offense, Kirk Cousins leading that offense at the quarterback spot, had a really nice year last year, leading this team to 13 wins. He threw for 4,500 yards and 29 touchdowns, but this is the last year of his contract. He is a free agent after this year, so either we see the Vikings take a serious leap this year, at least win one playoff game, depending if they're in the division or if they get the 1 seed and all they need to win is one game to get to the NFC title game, or if they're in that wild card round and they need to win a couple to get to the NFC championship game. I think they really need to see some serious growth from Kirk Cousins in the playoffs, get this team over the hump the next step, and get them potentially to the NFC championship game. And then I think they could look at extending him and bringing him back for a few more years. But if not, a young head coach in Kevin O'Connell, I think he might want to get his own guy in there and groom him. When you look at Kirk Cousins, to me, he's a lot like Jared Goff, who we talked about in the last episode with the Lions, where he kind of is what he is. He's going to be good enough to get you to competing for playoffs, to potentially in the playoffs, maybe win a game or 2, but I don't think over the top. This is a guy that'll have multiple 300-yard games with multiple touchdowns, like I said, help you compete for playoff spots. But I don't know if he's that guy that ever is going to get you to the next level. When you're talking top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, his name rarely comes up, and I think you need one of those top 10 guys to just make it to the conference championship nowadays alone. I mean, you look at the 4 quarterbacks last year in the conference championship: Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and then you had Brock Purdy, who was a bit of an outlier. We do see that from time to time, the outlier quarterback. We did see Jared Goff go to the Super Bowl with the Rams about 4 or 5 years back now, but I just think that's so rare. Like you're most likely going to have 3 top 5 to top 6 quarterbacks, I think, in that NFC and AFC title game every year. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is that guy. We saw even back in 2017 with Case Keenum in the Vikings, he was able to get there. It's every now and again you get that rarity, that non-elite quarterback in the conference championship game, but it's very rare to see. And I'm just not sure, especially at this stage of his career, if Kirk Cousins is able to do that. The Vikings are content with competing for division titles and maybe getting a playoff win every year. If that's their goal, fine, keep Kirk Cousins around. I think he could do just that. but I don't know if he's the guy to get you over the top. So a lot of pressure on him entering a contract year for him and looking to potentially be the guy long term for Kevin O'Connell going forward. But a guy that can certainly get you to the next level is, in my opinion, the best receiver in the NFL, and Justin Jefferson. Only entering his fourth year in the NFL, but he's got back-to-back years now, over 100 catches, had 128 last year. His rookie year, he had 88, so still a really good rookie year. And he's had over 1,400 receiving yards each of the last 2 seasons as well. So he was the offensive player of the year last year in the NFL, and he's shown to have great chemistry on the field with Kirk Cousins. And if he has a better year than last year where he had 128 catches, 1,809 yards, and 8 touchdowns, the Vikings should find themselves in the playoffs again. I really don't think it's that crazy to put it out of the realm if Justin Jefferson plays all 17 games that he could potentially go over 2,000 receiving yards. It might be barely. It might be like 2,005 receiving yards, but I don't think that's crazy to say because this is a guy that could turn out 200-yard receiving performances on a given week. That's how good and how talented he is. So the Vikings should find themselves in the playoffs again if Justin Jefferson has a really good year and Kirk Cousins replicates what he did last year. But the defense worries me, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The defense needs to be better to help complement this offense because the defense, I think, was what really hurt them in those games, in the one-score games where they were just squeaking out, is because the defense wasn't really holding up their end of the bargain. And then all 4 losses by double digits, I think every team scored 24 or more points in those games. So the defense does need to pick it up this year, but we'll continue on with the offense right here. Jordan Addison's going to be Justin Jefferson's running mate, a receiver now, the first-round pick out of USC. He figures to be the starting outside receiver on day one with Justin Jefferson. Now that longtime receiver Adam Thielen was released, and he's with the Panthers now. And then you look at KJ Osborne. He's a very solid number 3 option. When he's had his number called, he's produced for the Vikings as well. So a really solid group of receivers there in that trio, headlined by arguably the best receiver in the league. And then last year at the deadline, the Vikings went out, made a interdivision trade with the Lions, and they were able to get TJ Hawkinson, and he fit just finally in with this offense as well after being acquired from Detroit. So really nice group of pass catchers there for Kirk Cousins. And then when you look at the offensive line, Christian Darrisaw is emerging as one of the better young left tackles in the league, and Brian O'Neill is another good player at right tackle. And then the interior trio of Ezra Cleveland and Ed Ingram at guards, as well as Garrett Bradbury at center. That's another really solid trio as well. This is a upper half of the league offensive line, arguably like a top 12 to top 10 group. So if they're able to stay healthy, keep Kirk Cousins upright, and he doesn't turn the ball over. He did have 14 interceptions, I believe, last year. So he does need to get those down a little bit, take care of the ball a little bit more. But if they're able to take care of the ball and stay healthy on the side of the ball, this is an offense that's going to be able to put up points again. Will they be able to get over the top and that next level? I think that kind of depends on the defense. But then you look at the running game, they're missing longtime star running back there, Dalvin Cook, who was released this offseason after 4 straight 1,000-yard years. They turned the keys over to Alexander Madison in the backfield now, and he's looked really good in flashes when he's played in spots where Dalvin Cook's been injured, or even just getting touches while they were in the running back rotation together. Can he handle the full workload? It's kind of like him and Tony Pollard, who looked really nice in flashes and had a lot of good moments behind Ezekiel Elliott, but now will he be able to be that full-time, that 3-down back? That remains to be seen. And I think a drop-off is certainly expected because Dalvin Cook has been, during his time in the NFL, one of the best running backs in the league. So that's a question mark as well. I don't really think we should write that off. When we transition to the defense now, this is the big worrisome part of this team for me. They were the weak link for this team last year. They had exposed in the playoff game, allowing 31 points to the mediocre Giants offense, where Giants offense certainly improved from 2 years ago to last year. Daniel Jones, a healthy Saquon Barkley, but those receivers and the playmakers on that that offense are not a very dangerous group. And the Vikings got exposed by them, allowing 31 points. The Vikings last season were 26th in points per play allowed. And quite frankly, their secondary was Swiss cheese for most of the season. They just got exposed week after week after week. I remember vividly that 40-3 beatdown the Cowboys even put on them. So this is a team that the defense certainly needs to improve. And they went out and made a big acquisition, not really on the field, but in the coaching ranks, with bringing former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores, who loves to bring extra pressure on defense. He's really respected as one of the better defensive minds in the league, and he's going to be their new defensive coordinator this year. And for a defense that doesn't have that much talent, I think you have to bring in a guy like Flores who's able to, I think, get the most out of players and be really creative when it comes to bringing his pressure. Daniel Hunter just received a reworked contract. I forget if it was an extension or just a raise kind of, but that's important. He's back in camp. He's full swing now. He's this group's best player. He's coming off a 10.5 sack season. He has over 70 sacks in his NFL career. He's one of the better, more respected pass rushers in the NFL. So anytime you have a guy like that on the field, that's a valuable asset. And then you got Harrison Phillips and Dean Lowry are two other really solid defensive linemen that should help improve this unit this year and be a stronger group up front. Longtime signal caller, though, in the middle of the defense, Eric Kendricks, he's out the door as he signed with the Chargers in free agency. That was a cap casualty kind of deal there. So this is a middle part of this defense that I'm really nervous about. Former Saints pass rusher Marcus Davenport has been brought in, and Jordan Hicks, a former Eagle and Cardinal. Those are the outside backers on this team. Davenport more of a pass rusher, and Hicks has been more of just an off-ball linebacker. So a bit of a question about the fit there, but we'll see. As I talked about with Brian Flores, loves to bring the pressure. So I just expect Davenport to be just more of that go get the quarterback type of guy. And then Brian Asamoah is a player I haven't heard of. 2022 third-round draft pick. He looks to be the linebacker on the depth chart in the middle of the defense right now, an unproven guy. So he's got some stuff to prove in the shoes of Eric Kendricks. And then the secondary, as I said earlier, for last year, was pretty much Swiss cheese most of the season. And this is a major question mark. But Harrison Smith at the safety spot, he's the only real reliable player on the back end, but he's been there forever. You have to think he's past his prime, but I think you can still kind of rely on him to be a top half of the league safety. And then rookie third rounder Mekhi Blackman looks like he's going to be starting corner at opposite of the corner of Caleb Evans. So these are two really unproven and young corners that are really getting thrown out there. And then especially in a defense, as we talked about with Brian Flores, that's going to bring extra guys, going to bring extra rushers. There's going to be a lot of pressure on these outside corners to be able to cover. So remains to be seen. And then former Cardinal Byron Murphy in the slot. He's proven to be a pretty solid player and a playmaker. But this defense, it lacks a lot of big names and is going to have to rely on the creative nature of Flores to bring some heat and really mess opposing offenses up. So the Vikings are winning games this year. I'm expecting it to be 35-31, 38-30, games like that where they're outscoring their opponents and not really relying on their defense. If they're in lower scoring games, I think it's going to be harder to win just because I just don't really trust this defense going on this year. So very strong offense we're looking at for the Vikings, but a pretty poor defense. And then the coach grade for Kevin O'Connell, I'm going to give him a B. Had a really strong first year. As we talked about, 13-4, a division crown, and now they're the kings of the division right now with Aaron Rodgers gone in the strong year they had last year, but exposed in the playoffs, a lot of games where you could consider them lucky. They had that crazy comeback versus the Bills and that really crazy comeback, the biggest comeback, I believe, in NFL history versus the Colts. So two games that they probably shouldn't have won that they found ways to win. So I want to see if that kind of good luck and good fortune carries over into this year. But I think he's got the Vikings headed in the right direction, even though I have them taking a step back this year. I think he's going to be a very good coach in the NFL for a very long time. My breakout player for Minnesota this year, we're going to go with first-round pick at wide receiver Jordan Addison. Love this game coming out. I remember watching 2 years ago when studying Kenny Pickett film, was trying to high in on Pickett, and every time it seemed like he was going Jordan Addison's way before he transferred to USC. Just a very good route runner, seemingly always got open. He won the Biletnikoff Best Receiver Award 2 years ago when he was at Pitt. So there's a lot to like about his game, and I think he's a lot like Adam Thielen, which proved to be a really good compliment to Justin Jefferson. So watch out for Jordan Addison. He's going to get a lot of good looks with Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison is going to get a lot of good looks with Justin Jefferson working opposite of him. And then lastly, 2 games to watch for this Vikings team. We're going to go week 2 at the Eagles. These two teams met up in week 2 last year. This year, they'll be playing on Thursday Night Football. Last year was on Monday Night Football, but the Eagles dismantled them. That was one of their double-digit losses. I believe it was 24-7 that game. And this is a bit of a rivalry, I guess, going back to when the Eagles played them in the NFC Championship game. These two teams have had quite a few battles over the past few years. So look for Eagles-Vikings week 2 to be one of the better games on this Vikings schedule. And then last game to watch for, I'm going to go week 18 at the Lions. I really think that these are the best 2 teams in the division, and that game could be the Sunday Night Football game, the last game of the year for the division title when it's all said and done. So that's my take on the Minnesota Vikings this year. I have them taking a pretty big step back from their 13-4 record last year, going 8-9 this year and missing the playoffs. But next, we'll get into our third place episode, which you'll have to tune in to see. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.